The air conditioning in our Dubai hotel suite hummed like a fated insect, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my marriage was making the same sound. Vanessa stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, her silhouette sharp against the glittering cityscape, texting furiously on her phone while I unpacked our designer luggage I'd paid for with profits from my luxury car dealership back in Massachusetts. "This view is incredible," I said, trying to inject enthusiasm into my voice. "The Burj Khalifa looks amazing from here." She didn't even glance up from her screen. "Mm-hmm." Before we dive deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'd been getting a lot of those lately. Vanessa Lorne, she'd kept her maiden name for her travel blog, had perfected the art of being physically present while emotionally absent. At 39, she was still stunning, the kind of woman who could make other men forget their own names. Her auburn hair caught the desert sunlight streaming through the window, and her Instagram-perfect figure was wrapped in a silk dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. But something had changed over the past 6 months. The woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes now looked at me like I was a stain on her perfectly curated life. "Want to grab lunch by the pool?" I asked, loosening my tie. The flight from Boston had been brutal, and I was looking forward to some quality time with my wife. "Actually, I have a content creation session scheduled," she said, finally looking up from her phone. Her green eyes held none of their old warmth. "Omar from the hotel is helping me scout locations for tomorrow's shoot." Omar. The 29-year-old hotel manager who looked like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. I'd met him briefly at check-in, and something about the way he'd looked at Vanessa had set my teeth on edge. "I thought this was supposed to be our vacation," I said, keeping my voice level. "You know, time for us to reconnect?" Vanessa's laugh was sharp, brittle. "Cameron, please. This is work. My followers expect premium content when I travel somewhere this exotic. Not everyone can just coast on selling overpriced cars to suburban dads having midlife crises." The insult hit its mark, but I'd learned not to react. At 42, I'd built Field Luxury Motors from nothing into one of the most successful dealerships in the Boston area. I employed 37 people and had earned every dollar through hard work and smart business decisions. But to Vanessa, I was just the guy who funded her lifestyle while she played influencer to her 200,000 followers. I watched her gather her camera equipment, all of it purchased with my money, and head for the door. She paused at the threshold, not quite looking at me. "Don't wait up tonight," she said. "Omar's arranged a special dinner for content creators. It'll probably run late." And then she was gone, leaving me alone in our $3,000 a night suite with nothing but the hum of the air conditioner and the growing certainty that my marriage was circling the drain. I spent the afternoon by the pool, nursing overpriced drinks and watching other couples actually enjoy each other's company. Around sunset, I decided to find Vanessa and suggest we have dinner together. The concierge directed me to the rooftop bar, where I spotted her immediately. She was sitting at a corner table with Omar, leaning in close as he showed her something on his phone. Her laughter carried across the terrace, the kind of genuine, delighted laughter I hadn't heard from her in months. As I watched, she placed her hand on his arm, her fingers lingering just a moment too long. I turned around and went back to our suite. At midnight, I heard the keycard beep. Vanessa slipped in quietly, probably hoping I was asleep. I wasn't. "How was dinner?" I asked from the darkness. She jumped, then flicked on the bathroom light. "Fine, just networking stuff. You wouldn't understand. Try me." She emerged from the bathroom in a silk nightgown, her makeup freshly touched up despite the late hour. "Cameron, I'm tired. Can we not do this tonight?" "Do what? Have a conversation with my wife?" She sighed dramatically, the sound of someone dealing with a particularly slow child. "Look, I know this trip isn't turning out the way you wanted, but this is important for my brand. I have obligations." "What about your obligations to me, to us?" Vanessa turned to face me fully for the first time all day, and what I saw in her expression made me freeze. It wasn't anger or frustration, it was disgust, pure, undisguised revulsion, as if she couldn't believe she was stuck in this room with me. "Honestly, Cameron?" Her voice was ice cold. "I'd rather sleep with a homeless guy than with you." The words hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. I felt something fundamental shift inside my chest, a tectonic plate of emotion grinding against another until something cracked. I started laughing. Not a bitter laugh or a hurt laugh, but genuine amusement. Because in that moment, I realized I'd been trying to save something that was already over. I'd been mourning a woman who no longer existed, if she ever had. "That's funny," I said, wiping my eyes. "Because I was just thinking the same thing about you." Vanessa's face went pale. She'd expected hurt, Anger, maybe pleading. Laughter had caught her completely off guard. I got up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. You know what? I think I'll head home early. This vacation isn't really working out for me either. What do you mean? I turned back to her, and I could see confusion replacing the disgust in her eyes. This wasn't going according to her script. I mean, I'm going to pack my things, catch the next flight to Boston, and let you enjoy Dubai with your new friend Omar. In fact, let me make it easier for you. I pulled out my phone and called the front desk. Yes, this is Cameron Field in the presidential suite. I need to check out immediately and arrange transportation to the airport. No, just for one guest. My wife will be staying. Vanessa stared at me in shock. Cameron, what are you doing? I hung up and started throwing my clothes into my suitcase. I'm giving you what you want. Freedom, independence, the chance to sleep with whoever you prefer. You can't just leave me here? Sure I can. You're a strong, independent woman with a successful brand, right? I'm sure you'll figure it out. I was almost packed when I remembered something. I pulled out my phone again and made another call. Hi, this is Cameron Field. I need to cancel a credit card immediately. Yes, the American Express black card ending in 4721. No, it's not stolen. I just don't want my wife using it anymore. Vanessa's face went white. Cameron, you can't... Oh, but I can. It's my card, my account, my money. I zipped up my suitcase and headed for the door. Enjoy your stay, Vanessa. I hope Omar's company is worth it. As I waited for the elevator, I could hear her shouting my name from behind the closed door, but I didn't look back. The elevator arrived, and as the doors closed, I felt lighter than I had in months. The homeless guy comment had been the final straw, but in a way, I was grateful for it. It had shown me exactly where I stood in my wife's estimation, and it had freed me to stop caring about preserving something that was already destroyed. The flight back to Boston gave me plenty of time to think. Vanessa had humiliated me, dismissed me, and made it clear she had no respect for me or our marriage. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. I wasn't just some boring businessman she could discard when something more exciting came along. I was Cameron Field, and I'd built my success by being smarter, tougher, and more determined than my competition. If Vanessa wanted to play games, I was ready to play. But she wasn't going to like the rules. The familiar sight of Boston's skyline should have been comforting, but as my taxi pulled up to our house in Wellesley, all I felt was cold determination. The colonial-style mansion looked exactly the same. Perfectly manicured lawn, imported stone driveway, and the kind of understated elegance that whispered money rather than shouting it. But everything had changed. I paid the driver and stood on the front steps, fishing out my keys. Then I stopped. Why should I make this easy for her? Instead of going inside, I called my locksmith. Hey, Pete, it's Cameron Field. Yeah, I know it's Sunday, but I need you to change all the locks on my house today. No, it's not an emergency, but I'll pay double your usual rate if you can get here within the hour. While I waited, I sat in my car and made more calls. First to my lawyer, then to my accountant, then to Derek Martinez, my general manager at the dealership. Derek, it's Cameron. I need you to do something for me. Cancel all of Vanessa's credit cards that are tied to the business accounts. Yes, all of them. And Derek? If she calls asking about it, you don't know anything. I'll explain everything when I see you tomorrow. The locksmith arrived right on schedule. Pete had been changing locks for me for 15 years, ever since I'd had trouble with a disgruntled employee. He didn't ask questions, just got to work while I supervised and thought about my next moves. By evening, I was settled in my newly secured home with a glass of 25-year-old Macallan and my laptop open on the kitchen counter. Vanessa's social media accounts were a goldmine of information. She'd been documenting every moment of our Dubai trip, except for the parts that mattered. Her Instagram showed carefully curated shots of her by the pool, artfully arranged room service, and sunset views from the terrace. What it didn't show were the intimate dinners with Omar or the way she'd looked at me with such contempt, but the comments from her followers told a different story. "Where's Cameron?" asked one. "Trouble in paradise?" asked another. I scrolled through her recent posts, looking for clues I'd missed. There, a photo from 3 weeks ago, taken at some trendy Boston restaurant I'd never been to. She was with her best friend Sienna, both of them laughing at something off camera. But in the background, barely visible, was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, lean, with the kind of carefully tousled hair that took an hour to achieve. The timestamp showed it was taken on a Tuesday afternoon when Vanessa had supposedly been at a brand meeting. I screenshot the image and ran it through a reverse image search. Nothing. But I had other resources. The next morning, I arrived at Field Luxury Motors before anyone else. The dealership was my pride and joy. 40,000 square feet of gleaming showroom space filled with Bentleys, Maseratis, and Porsches. I'd started with a single used car lot 20 years ago and built this empire through sheer determination and an understanding of what wealthy people wanted. Not just luxury, but exclusivity. Ava Chen, my assistant, arrived at 8 sharp. At 26, she was brilliant, loyal, and had the kind of technical skills that made her invaluable in the digital age. She also had no love for Vanessa, who'd always treated her like hired help. "Good morning, Mr. Field," she said, settling at her desk with her usual efficiency. "How was Dubai?" "Educational," I said. "Ava, I need you to do some research for me. Quietly." I showed her the screenshot from Vanessa's Instagram. "I need to know who this man is. Use whatever resources you need to, but keep it discreet." Ava studied the image on her screen, her expression neutral. "Of course. Anything else?" "Yes. I want you to review all of Vanessa's business accounts. Any payments, sponsorships, or brand deals that run through our company systems. Get me a complete picture of her income streams." "Should I be concerned about something, Mr. Field?" I looked at this young woman who'd been nothing but professional and dedicated for the past 3 years. She deserved honesty. "My marriage is over, Ava, but I want to make sure I understand the full scope of the situation before I make any major decisions. Can I count on your discretion?" "Absolutely." Derek arrived an hour later, and I filled him in on the basics. He'd been with me for 8 years and had seen enough of Vanessa's behavior to not be particularly surprised. "So what's the plan?" he asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Information gathering, for now. I need to understand what I'm dealing with before I decide how to handle it." "And if she comes by here looking for you?" "She won't. She's stuck in Dubai with no access to our joint accounts. It'll take her at least a day to figure out alternative arrangements." I was wrong. She figured it out in 6 hours. My phone rang at 2 p.m., Vanessa's name lighting up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She called back immediately. Then again. On the 4th call, I answered. "Hello, Vanessa." "Cameron, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Her voice was shrill with panic and anger. "My cards aren't working, the hotel is asking for payment, and Omar says you canceled the room." "I canceled my room," I corrected. "You're welcome to make your own arrangements." "This is insane. You can't just abandon me in a foreign country." "I'm not abandoning you. You're a successful businesswoman with your own income. I'm sure you'll manage." There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her tone had shifted to the wheedling, manipulative voice she used when she wanted something. "Cameron, baby, I know we had a fight, but this is crazy. We can work through this. Come back and let's talk." "I'm done talking, Vanessa. You made your feelings perfectly clear last night." "I didn't mean that. I was tired and stressed, and you meant every word. And now you get to live with the consequences." I hung up and immediately blocked her number. By the end of the day, Ava had preliminary information about the mystery man. His name was Liam Sutter, 35 years old, and he styled himself as a digital nomad and lifestyle entrepreneur. His LinkedIn profile was full of buzzwords and vague descriptions of his various business ventures, none of which seemed to generate any actual income. "He's been in Boston for about 3 months, Ava reported, staying at short-term rentals, mostly in the Back Bay area. His social media suggests he's targeting wealthy women for his and spiritual coaching services." "Spiritual coaching?" "Apparently he helps people unlock their authentic selves and break free from limiting relationships." Ava's tone made it clear what she thought of that particular business model. I studied Liam's photos on his Instagram account. He was handsome in a calculated way, with the kind of smile that probably worked very well on unhappy wives looking for excitement. His posts were a mixture of pseudo-philosophical quotes, shirtless workout videos, and pictures from expensive restaurants and events. "How did he and Vanessa meet?" "I'm still working on that, but I found several instances where they were at the same events. There was a wellness conference at the Mandarin Oriental last month, and before that, a mindful living workshop in Cambridge." Of course. Vanessa had been on a self-improvement kick lately, attending various seminars and workshops that I'd assumed were just another phase. Now I understood they'd been hunting grounds. "Keep digging," I told Ava. "I want to know everything about Mr. Sutter's operation." That evening, I drove through our neighborhood, noting which houses had lights on and which cars were in driveways. Wellesley was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business and news traveled fast. By now, several neighbors had probably noticed that Vanessa's car wasn't in our driveway and that I'd been seen coming and going alone. I stopped by the local coffee shop, a place called Grind that served as the unofficial gossip headquarters for our area. Sure enough, Brenda Walsh was there, holding court at her usual corner table. At 48, Brenda was the neighborhood's self-appointed information broker, a woman who knew everyone's secrets and wasn't shy about sharing them. "Cameron," she called out as soon as she spotted me. "I haven't seen you around lately. How was your trip?" I ordered a coffee and joined her table, knowing that whatever I said would be repeated to at least a dozen people before the evening was over. "Dubai was interesting," I said carefully. "Different from what I expected." "And how's Vanessa? I saw her Instagram posts. That hotel looked incredible." "She's still there, actually, extending her stay for work." Brenda's eyes lit up with interest. "Oh, business or pleasure?" "With Vanessa, it's hard to tell the difference sometimes." It was a subtle dig, but Brenda caught it immediately. I could practically see her filing the information away for future use. "Well, I'm sure she's having a wonderful time. She always seems to land on her feet, doesn't she?" "She certainly thinks she does." I finished my coffee and left, satisfied that I'd planted the right seeds. Brenda's gossip network would ensure that speculation about Vanessa's extended absence would spread quickly through our social circle. Back home, I poured another whiskey and stood in my living room looking at the framed photos of our life together. Our wedding day, vacations, anniversary dinners, all of it a lie, or at least a performance. I'd been playing the role of the devoted husband while she'd been planning her exit strategy, but she'd made one crucial error in judgment. She'd assumed I would be devastated, that I would beg her to come back, that I would accept whatever scraps of affection she was willing to throw my way. Instead, she'd freed me from any obligation to be the better person. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Vanessa had found a way around the block. "Cameron, please, we need to talk. I'm flying back tomorrow." I typed back, "The locks have been changed. Find somewhere else to stay." Her response came immediately. "You can't lock me out of my own house." "It's my house, my name on the deed. Check your copy of the prenup if you're confused about the details." There was no response to that, because there was no response to give. Vanessa had insisted on keeping her finances separate during our marriage, claiming it was about maintaining her independence. She'd refused to be added to the deed, saying she didn't want to be tied down by property ownership. At the time, I'd thought it was romantic, a sign that she was with me for love, not money. Now I realized it had been calculated. She'd wanted the freedom to walk away without complications, taking whatever she could carry. She just hadn't expected me to walk away first. Vanessa arrived back in Boston on Wednesday evening, and by Thursday morning, she was at my dealership. I watched through my office window as she pulled up in a rental car, her face set in the determined expression I knew so well. She'd changed tactics from panic to righteous indignation, and she was dressed for battle in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Derek intercepted her at the entrance to the showroom, but I could see from his body language that she was giving him a hard time. After a few minutes, he knocked on my office door. "She's demanding to see you," he said. "Says she'll make a scene if you don't come out." "Let her," I replied, not looking up from the contract I was reviewing. "Call security if she gets disruptive. I'm busy." But Vanessa was smarter than that. She knew that causing a scene at my place of business would only hurt her position. Instead, she positioned herself in the customer lounge where she could be seen but not heard, playing the role of the patient, long-suffering wife. I let her sit there for 2 hours. Finally, around noon, I walked out to greet her. She stood immediately, her face lighting up with what looked like genuine relief. "Cameron, thank God. We need to talk." "Hello, Vanessa. You look well rested. How was your extended vacation?" Her smile faltered slightly at my tone. "Can we go somewhere private?" "This is fine. Derek, Ava, give us a moment, please." They retreated to the back office, but I knew they were within earshot. Good. I wanted witnesses to whatever came next. "Cameron, I know you're angry, but abandoning me in Dubai was completely out of line. I had to borrow money from Omar just to change my flight." "I'm sorry to hear that. You should probably pay him back promptly. Interest rates can be quite high on personal loans." She stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. "Are you serious right now? I'm your wife." "Are you? Because the woman I married wouldn't have said the things you said to me on Sunday night. She wouldn't have spent our vacation flirting with other men while treating me like an embarrassment." Vanessa glanced around nervously, suddenly aware that we were having this conversation in public. "This isn't the place for this discussion." "Then where would you suggest? Our house? Oh, wait, you don't have access to that anymore." "Cameron, please. I know I hurt your feelings, but you're being ridiculous. We're married. We can work through this." I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or understanding of what she'd done. Instead, I saw calculation. She was trying to figure out what approach would work best to get what she wanted. "What exactly do you think we're working toward, Vanessa?" "Our marriage, our life together." The life where you tell me you'd rather sleep with a homeless man than with me? The life where you disappear for hours with other men while I sit alone in our hotel room? That life?" Her face flushed red. I was upset. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. No, Vanessa. People say things they've been thinking when they're upset. You just finally told me the truth? I could see her struggling to find the right words, the right angle of attack. She'd always been able to manipulate me before, to make me feel like I was overreacting or being unreasonable, but something fundamental had shifted, and we both knew it. "Fine," she said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "Maybe I was honest about some things. Maybe I've been unhappy. But that doesn't mean our marriage has to be over. We could try counseling or you could continue your relationship with Liam Sutter." The color drained from her face. "What? Liam Sutter, 35, spiritual coach, digital nomad. Ring any bells?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Really, because I have photos of you two together at various events over the past few months. I have records of text messages and phone calls. Should I continue?" Vanessa sank back into her chair, the fight going out of her. "Cameron, it's not what you think. What I think is that you've been planning this for months. The spiritual coaching, the wellness seminars, the sudden interest in finding yourself. It was all about finding him." "He helped me realize that I wasn't happy," she said quietly. "That I deserved better." "Better than what? A husband who loved you, financial security, a beautiful home, and the freedom to pursue your career? Better than being married to someone who doesn't understand me." And there it was, the real truth, finally out in the open. "You're right," I said. "I don't understand you. I don't understand how someone can take everything they're given and still feel entitled to more. I don't understand how someone can make promises and then break them without a second thought. I don't understand how someone can look at a person who's devoted his life to making them happy and feel nothing but contempt." Tears were streaming down her face now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her, no urge to take back my words. "But here's what I do understand, Vanessa. I understand business, I understand consequences, and I understand that you've made your choice." "What does that mean?" I stood up and straightened my tie. "It means you should contact a lawyer. It means you should find somewhere else to live. And it means you should figure out how to support yourself, because you won't be doing it with my money anymore. You can't just cut me off. I have rights. You have whatever rights the prenup gives you, which, if memory serves, isn't much." She stared at me in shock. "You're really going to do this? You're going to throw away 8 years of marriage over one mistake?" "One mistake?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Vanessa, this wasn't a mistake. This was a choice, a series of choices. And now I'm making mine." I turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at her. "Oh, and Vanessa? You might want to let Liam know that his spiritual coaching business is about to face some challenges. I've done some research into his methods, and I don't think his other clients would appreciate knowing how he operates." Her face went white. "What are you talking about?" "Ask him. I'm sure he'll explain everything." I left her sitting in the customer lounge and went back to my office. Through the window, I watched her make a frantic phone call, probably to Liam. After about 10 minutes, she gathered her purse and left without another word. Ava appeared in my doorway a few minutes later. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Lighter," I said, and realized it was true. "Good, because I have some information you're going to want to see." She handed me a folder thick with printed documents and photos. "Mr. Sutter isn't just targeting your wife. He's been running the same game on at least 3 other women in the Boston area. Married women, all of them wealthy, all of them unhappy." I flipped through the evidence Ava had compiled. Photos of Liam with different women at expensive restaurants, copies of social media posts, even some financial records she'd somehow obtained. "How did you get all this?" "I have a friend who works in private investigation. She owed me a favor." "This is impressive work, Ava. What's the bottom line?" "The bottom line is that your wife isn't special. She's just another mark in a long-term con game. And if my guess is right, Liam's been setting her up to leave you and move in with him, probably with as much of your money as she can get her hands on." I studied a photo of Liam with a blonde woman I didn't recognize, both of them looking very cozy at what appeared to be a charity gala. "Who's this?" "Patricia Hendricks. Her husband owns a chain of medical device companies. She left him 6 months ago and moved to California with Liam, lasted about 3 weeks before he disappeared with $50,000 from her personal account." "And she didn't press charges?" "Too embarrassed. These women don't want to admit they were conned. They'd rather take the loss and move on quietly. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. Vanessa wasn't just cheating on me. She was being manipulated by a professional. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. What happened to Patricia after Liam left? She moved back east, but not to her husband. Word is he'd changed the locks and filed for divorce while she was gone. Last I heard, she was living with her sister in Connecticut. A cautionary tale, and one that Vanessa was apparently determined to repeat. Ava, I want you to compile all of this into a comprehensive report. Include everything, the financial records, the photos, the timeline of his previous cons. Make it thorough and professional. What are you planning to do with it? I smiled for the first time in days. I'm going to give Vanessa exactly what she wants, the truth about her spiritual coach. That evening, I drove to the address Ava had found for Liam's current rental. It was a trendy loft in the Back Bay, the kind of place that rented for $5,000 a month and came fully furnished for people who didn't plan to stay long. I didn't go up to his apartment. Instead, I sat in my car across the street and waited. Around 8 o'clock, Vanessa's rental car pulled up, and she hurried inside. She looked upset, probably still processing our conversation from earlier. An hour later, they emerged together. Liam had his arm around her shoulders in what was probably meant to be a comforting gesture, but I could see the tension in both their faces. They got into his car, a leased BMW that he probably couldn't afford, and drove away. I followed at a distance as they went to dinner at an upscale restaurant in Cambridge. Through the window, I could see them having what looked like an intense conversation. Vanessa was gesturing animatedly while Liam sat back with his arms crossed, looking less like a supportive lover and more like a man calculating his options. This was better than I'd hoped. The pressure I'd applied was already causing cracks in their relationship. Liam had signed up to seduce a wealthy, unhappy wife, not to deal with a messy divorce and a husband who fought back. I drove home, poured myself a drink, and called my lawyer. Richard, it's Cameron Field. I need to accelerate the divorce proceedings. Yes, I'm sure. No, I don't want to try mediation. I want this done as quickly and cleanly as possible. After I hung up, I sat in my living room and looked around at the life I'd built. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of dismantling it, at least the parts that included Vanessa. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The man who'd built a business from nothing. The man who didn't back down from a fight. The man who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to change the rules of the game entirely. Vanessa and Liam thought they were playing me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Friday morning brought the first salvo in what would become a very public war. I arrived at the dealership to find Derek waiting for me with a grim expression and a tablet in his hands. You need to see this, he said, pulling up Vanessa's Instagram account. She'd posted a long, carefully crafted message to her followers, painting herself as the victim of an abusive, controlling husband who had abandoned her in a foreign country and was now trying to steal her livelihood. The post included a photo of her looking tearful and vulnerable, sitting in what appeared to be a modest apartment. My heart is broken, the post read. I thought I married a man who would support my dreams and respect my independence. Instead, I've discovered that love, to some people, means ownership. I'm asking for privacy during this difficult time as I navigate this painful situation and try to rebuild my life. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Her followers were outraged on her behalf, calling me everything from a narcissist to a monster. Several had even tagged my business account, threatening to boycott the dealership. She's good, Derek said grudgingly. I'll give her that. She's desperate, I corrected, and desperate people make mistakes. I was right. By afternoon, Vanessa had made her first major error. In her eagerness to control the narrative, she'd posted a follow-up message that included too many details. She mentioned specific restaurants where she claimed I'd embarrassed her, specific dates when I'd allegedly been controlling, and specific amounts of money I'd supposedly withheld from her. The problem was, half of it was verifiably false. The restaurants she mentioned had security cameras. The dates she cited could be cross-referenced with credit card records and social media posts, and the money she claimed I'd stolen from her had never been hers to begin with. Ava had been monitoring the situation all day, screenshot every post and comment before they could be deleted or edited. She's digging her own grave, Ava observed. Look at this. She showed me a comment thread where one of Vanessa's followers had asked for more details about the financial abuse. Vanessa had responded with specific allegations about joint accounts and business expenses, not realizing that she was creating a paper trail of false statements that could be used against her in divorce proceedings. She's also made another mistake, Ava continued. She's been posting from Liam's apartment, but she's trying to make it look like she's staying somewhere else. The background in her photos doesn't match the address she gave her lawyer. How do you know what address she gave her lawyer? Ava smiled. I have my sources. By Saturday, the situation had escalated further. Vanessa had apparently decided that social media wasn't enough. She needed to take her campaign public. She'd scheduled an interview with a local blogger who specialized in exposing toxic masculinity and financial abuse in relationships. The interview was set to go live on Sunday evening, perfectly timed to cause maximum damage to my reputation and business. But I had a counter strategy ready. Sunday afternoon, I called a meeting at the dealership. Derek, Ava, and my lawyer Richard were all present as I outlined my plan. Vanessa wants to play this in the court of public opinion, I said. Fine. Let's give the public all the facts. I handed Richard the comprehensive file Ava had compiled on Liam Sutter. I want you to release this to the press, not as an attack on Vanessa, but as a public service announcement about a con artist operating in the Boston area. Cameron, Richard said carefully, this could backfire. It might look like you're trying to embarrass your wife. I'm not trying to embarrass her. I'm trying to save her. And if that's not possible, I'm trying to save the next woman he targets. The press release went out at 4 p.m., 2 hours before Vanessa's interview was scheduled to air. It was professionally written and carefully worded, focusing on Liam's pattern of behavior with multiple victims rather than his relationship with Vanessa specifically. But the implications were clear. The blogger who'd been planning to interview Vanessa suddenly found herself with a much bigger story. Instead of a simple tale of marital discord, she now had evidence of a sophisticated con game targeting wealthy women across the city. Vanessa's interview was postponed indefinitely. By Monday morning, the story had been picked up by 3 local news stations and 2 newspapers. Liam Sutter's photo was on the front page of the Boston Herald under the headline, Spiritual Coach or Spiritual Con. I was in my office when Vanessa called. This time, I answered on the first ring. You bastard, she said without preamble. You destroyed him. I exposed him, I corrected. There's a difference. Those allegations are lies. Liam isn't a con artist. He's a healer who helps people find their authentic selves. Is that what he told you? Did he also tell you about Patricia Hendricks, or Sarah Chen, or Michelle Rodriguez? Because they all thought he was helping them find their authentic selves too, right up until he disappeared with their money. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. That's different, she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. How is it different, Vanessa? Because he loves me. What we have is real. What you have is a business transaction. You're trading your marriage and your security for the illusion of excitement and romance, and when he's gotten everything he can from you, he'll move on to the next mark. You're wrong. Am I? Then why hasn't he asked you to marry him? Why is he still living in a month-to-month rental? Why does he keep pushing you to get more money from me in the divorce? Each question hit its mark. I could hear her breathing, getting shaky on the other end of the line. He's just being practical, she said weakly. He's being calculating. Vanessa, I know you hate me right now, but I'm telling you the truth. You're being used. Even if that were true, it doesn't change anything between us. We're still getting divorced. I know, but maybe you can salvage something from this mess if you're smart about it. What do you mean? I mean, you should think very carefully about your next moves, because right now you still have some options. But if you keep following Liam's playbook, you're going to end up with nothing. I hung up before she could respond. The rest of the week was a masterclass in watching someone self-destruct in real time. Despite my warning, Vanessa doubled down on her relationship with Liam. She posted photos of them together, wrote passionate defenses of his character, and attacked anyone who questioned their relationship. Meanwhile, Liam's other victims began coming forward. The story grew bigger each day as more women shared their experiences with the spiritual coach, who had promised them enlightenment and delivered financial ruin. But the most damaging revelation came from an unexpected source. Sienna, Vanessa's best friend and fellow influencer. Sienna had been conspicuously quiet during the whole scandal, not commenting on any of Vanessa's posts or offering public support. I'd assumed she was just trying to stay out of the drama. I was wrong. Thursday evening, Sienna posted her own lengthy Instagram message. But instead of supporting her friend, she revealed that she'd been documenting Vanessa's affair for months, apparently planning to use the information for her own social media content. I've been struggling with whether to speak out, Sienna's post began, but I can't stay silent while my friend destroys her life and hurts innocent people in the process. She went on to share screenshots of text conversations where Vanessa had bragged about manipulating me, planning to take as much money as possible in the divorce, and laughing about how stupid I was for not seeing what was happening. The most damaging screenshot showed a conversation from 2 weeks before our Dubai trip. Vanessa: I can't stand another day pretending to be happy with Cameron. The Dubai trip is going to be perfect. I'll make sure he knows exactly how I feel, and then Liam and I can be together openly. Sienna. Are you sure you want to burn that bridge? He's been good to you. Vanessa. Good to me? He's boring and pathetic. I'd literally rather be with anyone else on the planet. A homeless guy would be more exciting in bed. The homeless guy comment, the same words she'd said to me in Dubai, had been planned all along. The whole confrontation had been scripted, designed to provoke me into leaving so she could play the victim. But Sienna's betrayal went deeper than just sharing private conversations. She revealed that she'd been working with Liam from the beginning, helping him identify potential targets among their social circle. Vanessa hadn't been his first victim in their friend group. She'd been his most successful one. I thought it was just harmless fun at first, Sienna wrote. But when I saw how far it had gone, how many lives were being destroyed, I knew I had to speak up. Vanessa, if you're reading this, please wake up before it's too late. The post went viral within hours. Vanessa's followers, who had been sympathetic to her plight, turned on her with vicious speed. The comments section became a battlefield of accusations and recriminations. By Friday morning, Vanessa had lost nearly half her followers and all of her remaining brand sponsorships. Her carefully curated online empire was crumbling in real time. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the look of disgust on her face in Dubai, the calculated cruelty of her words, the months of lies and manipulation. Whatever happened to her now, she'd brought on herself. The final blow came Saturday morning. I was having coffee at Grind when Brenda Walsh approached my table with a newspaper in her hands and a gleeful expression on her face. Have you seen this? She asked, spreading the paper out in front of me. It was a full-page article in the Boston Globe's weekend edition titled The Influencer, the Con Man, and the Betrayal That Broke the Internet. The story laid out the entire scandal in excruciating detail, complete with photos, financial records, and interviews with multiple victims. But the most devastating part was the sidebar story about the friendship between Vanessa and Sienna, revealing how they'd been competing for followers and brand deals for years, each trying to outdo the other with increasingly dramatic content. It appears, the article concluded, that in the world of social media influence, even friendship is just another form of performance art. I folded the paper and handed it back to Brenda. Interesting story. Interesting. She looked at me incredulously. Cameron, your wife is front-page news. How are you so calm about all this? I took a sip of my coffee and considered the question. How was I so calm? A week ago, I would have been mortified to see my personal life splashed across the newspapers. But now, all I felt was a sense of completion. Sometimes, I said finally, the truth is its own reward. Brenda studied my face, probably looking for signs of hidden distress or secret pain. But there was nothing to find. The man who had been desperate to save his marriage was gone, replaced by someone who understood that some things weren't worth saving. Well, she said finally, I suppose you're better off without her. I suppose I am. That evening, I sat in my home office, reviewing the final divorce papers that Richard had prepared. Everything was straightforward. The prenup held, the property division was clear, and Vanessa's attempts to claim financial abuse had been thoroughly discredited by her own social media posts. She would walk away with exactly what she'd brought to the marriage. Nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Vanessa still trying to find ways around the blocks I'd put in place. We need to talk. This has gone too far. I typed back, No, it's gone exactly far enough. Sign the papers, Vanessa. It's over. Her response came quickly. Please, I made a mistake. I see that now. Can't we try again? I stared at the message for a long moment, thinking about the woman I'd married 8 years ago. Had she ever really existed, or had she always been the person I'd seen in Dubai, cold, calculating, and cruel? It didn't matter anymore. The only mistake, I typed back, was thinking you were someone worth saving. Then I blocked the number and deleted the conversation. Outside, it was starting to rain, the kind of steady downpour that would wash the streets clean by morning. I poured myself a drink and stood at the window, watching the water run down the glass. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding my life, but tonight, I was content to watch the storm wash away the last remnants of my old one. The rain continued through the weekend, turning Boston streets into rivers of reflected neon and washing away the last of autumn's leaves. I spent Saturday morning at the dealership, catching up on paperwork and enjoying the unusual quiet. Most of my staff was off, and the showroom was empty except for Derek, who'd come in to handle a few urgent matters. Any word from Vanessa? He asked, settling into the chair across from my desk with a cup of coffee. She's been trying to reach me through various numbers and email addresses. I'm not responding. And Liam? I smiled. Mr. Sutter appears to have developed a sudden interest in traveling. According to Ava's sources, he's been making inquiries about flights to several non-extradition countries. Smart man. Smart enough to know when he's beaten, anyway. But I was wrong about Liam being smart. Sunday evening proved that desperation makes people do stupid things. I was at home, reading in my study, when the security system chimed. Someone was at the front gate. The camera showed a figure in a hooded jacket, face obscured, pressing the intercom button repeatedly. Mr. Field? The voice was male, nervous, trying to sound confident. We need to talk. Liam Sutter. I'd been wondering when he'd show up. I could have called the police, had him arrested for trespassing. Instead, I was curious to hear what he had to say. I buzzed him through the gate and watched through the window as he approached the front door. He looked terrible. The carefully maintained appearance of spiritual wellness was gone, replaced by the haggard look of a man under serious pressure. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unwashed, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I opened the door before he could knock. Mr. Sutter, what an unexpected pleasure. Up close, he looked even worse. His hands were shaking, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. You've ruined everything, he said without preamble. My business, my reputation, my life. Yeah, all destroyed because you couldn't handle your wife finding someone better. I laughed. Is that what you think this is about? Jealousy? Isn't it? You couldn't stand that she chose me over you, so you decided to destroy us both. I didn't destroy anything, Liam. I just told the truth. If that destroyed your business, maybe you should have chosen a more honest profession. His face flushed red. You don't know anything about what I do. I help people. I free them from toxic relationships and limiting beliefs. You con lonely women out of their money. There's a difference. Vanessa wasn't lonely. She was trapped. Married to a man who didn't appreciate her, who couldn't see her true potential. And you could? Yes. I saw her for who she really was. A narcissistic, manipulative woman who was willing to betray her marriage vows for a little excitement? Yes, I suppose you would recognize that. Liam stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height advantage, but I'd been in business for 20 years, dealing with angry customers, aggressive competitors, and hostile negotiations. A washed-up con artist didn't scare me. You think you're so smart, he said, but you don't know everything. You don't know the whole truth about your precious wife. Enlighten me. He smiled, a nasty expression that transformed his face completely. She wasn't my first target in your social circle, and she wasn't working alone. That got my attention. What do you mean? I mean, your wife's best friend Sienna has been feeding me information about wealthy, unhappy wives for months. She's been my partner from the beginning. I kept my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. That's an interesting theory. It's not a theory, it's a fact. Who do you think identified you as a target? Who do you think told me about Vanessa's weaknesses, her insecurities, her desires? Sienna set the whole thing up. Then why did she betray you both on social media? Liam's smile faltered. Because she's smarter than I gave her credit for. When things started going bad, she jumped ship and threw us under the bus to save herself. I processed this information, thinking back to Sienna's Instagram post and the timing of her revelations. She'd waited until the scandal was already breaking, then positioned herself as the reluctant whistleblower rather than an accomplice. Prove it, I said. Liam pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. Here, look at this. He showed me a text conversation between him and Sienna, dating back 3 months. Sienna. Vanessa is getting restless. She's been complaining about Cameron more lately. Liam. Good. Is she ready for the next phase? Sienna. Almost. She needs to feel like she's making the choice herself. Can you arrange to accidentally meet her at the wellness conference? Liam. Already planned. You've done good work setting this up. Sienna. Just remember our agreement. 20% of whatever you get from the divorce settlement. I read through more messages, each one more damaging than the last. Sienna hadn't just been feeding Liam information, she'd been actively manipulating Vanessa, planting seeds of dissatisfaction and encouraging her to attend events where she'd encounter Liam. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because I want revenge. She destroyed me and I want her to pay for it. What makes you think I'll help you? Because she played you too. You think you won, but she's been manipulating this whole situation from the beginning. Even now, she's probably planning her next move. I handed his phone back to him. Interesting story, but I'm not interested in revenge against Sienna. Why not? She's as guilty as anyone. Because, I said, opening the door wider in a clear invitation for him to leave, she's not my problem anymore. None of you are. Liam stared at me in disbelief. That's it? You're just going to let her get away with it? I'm going to let all of you deal with the consequences of your own actions. That's justice enough for me. You're making a mistake. Sienna won't stop here. She'll find another mark, another victim. Then they'll have to deal with her the same way I dealt with you, by being smarter, tougher, and more prepared than their enemies. Liam left without another word, but I could see from his expression that he wasn't done. Desperate people don't give up easily, and he still had cards to play. I was right. Monday morning brought news that Liam had gone to the police, claiming that I'd orchestrated a conspiracy to defame him and destroy his business. He'd also filed a civil suit, alleging defamation and intentional interference with his business relationships. Richard called me at the dealership to discuss the situation. It's a nuisance suit, he said. He has no case, and he knows it, but he's hoping you'll settle just to make it go away. What are the chances he'll win? 0. Everything we released was factual and documented, but it'll cost time and money to defend. Then we defend it. I'm not paying that man a single dollar. There's something else, Cameron. He's also made allegations about Sienna's involvement in the whole scheme. If those are true, it changes the dynamic significantly. I thought about the text messages Liam had shown me. What kind of changes? If Sienna was actively participating in a conspiracy to defraud you, she could be criminally liable, and her social media post positioning herself as a whistleblower could be seen as obstruction of justice. I'm not interested in pursuing criminal charges against Sienna. You might not have a choice. If the DA's office decides to investigate, they won't need your cooperation to build a case. That afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor. Sienna arrived at the dealership just as I was preparing to leave for the day. She looked as polished as ever, but I could see the strain around her eyes. Cameron, we need to talk. Hello, Sienna. I was wondering when you'd show up. She glanced around the showroom nervously. Can we go somewhere private? I led her to my office and closed the door. She sat down across from my desk, crossing her legs and trying to project confidence, but her hands were shaking slightly. I suppose Liam told you about our arrangement, she said. He mentioned some things. Why don't you tell me your version? Sienna sighed, the perfect mask slipping slightly. It started as a joke, almost. Liam approached me at a party, said he was looking for potential clients for his coaching business, wealthy women who seemed unhappy in their marriages. And you thought of Vanessa. I thought of several people, actually, but Vanessa was the most obvious choice. She'd been complaining about you for months, saying she felt trapped and unappreciated. So you decided to help her find someone new. I decided to help her find herself. If that meant ending her marriage, so be it. I leaned back in my chair, studying this woman I'd known for years. Vanessa's best friend, a frequent guest in our home, someone I'd trusted and respected. What was your cut? 20% of whatever financial settlement she got from the divorce. And you didn't see anything wrong with that? Sienna's composure cracked completely. Wrong? Cameron, you have no idea what it's like being Vanessa's friend. Always competing, always trying to keep up with her lifestyle, her followers, her brand deals. Do you know how exhausting it is to maintain this image? So you decided to profit from destroying her marriage. I decided to profit from what was going to happen anyway. She was already unhappy, already looking for a way out. I just facilitated the process. By manipulating her into an affair with a con artist. I didn't know he was a con artist. I thought he was just a player, someone who would give her the excitement she was looking for. But when you found out the truth, you didn't warn her. Instead, you threw her under the bus to save yourself. Sienna stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. What was I supposed to do? Go down with the ship? Vanessa made her choices, I made mine. And now you're here because those choices are catching up with you. She turned back to face me, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Liam is telling people I was the mastermind behind everything. That's not true, Cameron. I was just an opportunist. What do you want from me, Sienna? I want you to tell the police that I tried to help you, that I provided information that exposed Liam's operation. But that's not what happened, is it? It's close enough to the truth. I stood up and walked around the desk, stopping directly in front of her. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to lie to protect you from the consequences of your own actions? I want you to be reasonable. We both know this whole situation got out of hand, but we can contain it if we work together. The way you and Liam work together, the way you and Vanessa work together. I'm sorry, Sienna, but I don't think you understand what the word together means. Her face hardened. Fine. If you won't help me, I'll find another way to protect myself. I'm sure you will. But whatever you do, remember this. I didn't create this situation. I didn't manipulate anyone or lie to anyone or betray anyone's trust. I just refused to be a victim. Sienna left without another word, but I knew this wasn't over. She was right about one thing. She was an opportunist, and opportunists always have backup plans. I was about to learn just how far she was willing to go to protect herself. The final act began Tuesday morning with a phone call from Richard that woke me from the first peaceful sleep I'd had in weeks. Cameron, you need to get down here immediately. Sienna Walsh has filed a restraining order against you, claiming you've been harassing and threatening her. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. That's impossible. I haven't contacted her at all except for our conversation yesterday. She's claiming that conversation was threatening, and she has a recording of it. A recording? I thought back to our meeting in my office. She recorded our conversation without my consent? Apparently. And she's edited it in a way that makes you sound intimidating and unstable. She's also claiming you've been stalking her, sending threatening messages, and trying to turn her friends against her. I was getting dressed as we talked, my mind racing through the implications. This is a setup. She's trying to discredit me before the police investigation gets too deep. That's my assessment too, but we need to take this seriously. The hearing is at 2 o'clock today. By the time I reached Richard's office, he had copies of all the documents Sienna had filed. Reading through them was like entering an alternate reality where I was the villain and she was the innocent victim. According to her sworn statement, I had become increasingly erratic and threatening following my wife's departure. She claimed I had blamed her for my marital problems and had begun a campaign of harassment designed to destroy her reputation and business. The evidence she provided was a masterpiece of selective editing. The recording of our conversation had been cut and spliced to remove all context, making my questions sound like accusations and my statements sound like threats. This is sophisticated work, Richard observed. She didn't put this together overnight. She's been planning this since the scandal broke, I realized. Maybe longer. She needed a way to discredit me in case I figured out her involvement. The question is, can we prove it? I thought about that question as we prepared for the hearing. Sienna was smart, careful, and had been planning this for weeks, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. Richard, I need you to contact Ava and have her bring all the research files on Sienna to the courthouse. Everything we have. Cameron, this is a restraining order hearing, not a trial. We can't introduce extensive evidence about her background. We won't need to. Trust me. The hearing was held in a small courtroom with just the judge, the court reporter, and the necessary attorneys. Sienna arrived looking perfectly composed, dressed in a conservative suit that projected vulnerability and respectability. She testified first, reading from a prepared statement that painted me as an unstable man who had become obsessed with blaming others for my failed marriage. She spoke about feeling unsafe and terrorized by my alleged behavior. The judge, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Hendricks, listened with obvious sympathy. When Sienna finished, Judge Hendricks looked at me with the expression of someone who had already made up her mind. Mr. Field, these are serious allegations. Do you have anything to say in response? I stood up, straightening my tie. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to ask Ms. Walsh a few questions, if I may. This isn't a cross-examination, Mr. Field. You can make a statement in your defense. With respect, Your Honor, I believe a few questions will clarify the situation more effectively than any statement I could make. Judge Hendricks looked uncertain, but nodded. Very well. But keep it brief. I turned to face Sienna, who was watching me with barely concealed nervousness. Ms. Walsh, in your statement, you mentioned that I've been stalking you. Can you provide specific dates and locations where this alleged stalking occurred? Well, it's more of a pattern of behavior than specific incidents. I see. And the threatening messages you claim I sent, do you have copies of these messages? They were mostly verbal threats. During our conversation in my office yesterday, did you or did you not ask me to lie to the police about your involvement with Liam Sutter? Sienna's face went pale. I never asked you to lie about anything. Really? Because I have a recording of that conversation, too. It was a bluff, but a calculated one. I'd seen the fear in Sienna's eyes when she realized her own recording might not tell the whole story. Your Honor, Richard interjected, we'd like to submit our own recording of the conversation in question. I didn't have a recording, but Sienna didn't know that. And more importantly, Judge Hendricks didn't know that. Ms. Walsh, I continued, isn't it true that you were working with Mr. Sutter to manipulate my wife into having an affair? That's ridiculous. And isn't it true that you were promised 20% of whatever financial settlement she received in our divorce? Sienna's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Judge Hendricks was looking at Sienna with new interest, and I could see doubt creeping into her expression. Your Honor, I said, I'd like to submit evidence that Ms. Walsh has been involved in a conspiracy to defraud me, and that this restraining order is simply another part of that conspiracy. Objection! Sienna's lawyer was on his feet. This is highly irregular. Sustained, Judge Hendricks said. Mr. Field, you're here to respond to allegations of harassment, not to make counter-allegations. With respect, Your Honor, the two issues are directly related. Ms. Walsh is claiming I'm harassing her to cover up her own criminal behavior. Judge Hendricks considered this for a moment. I'll allow limited evidence on the question of motive, but keep it focused, Mr. Field. Richard handed me the file Ava had prepared. It contained copies of the text messages between Sienna and Liam, financial records showing payments from Liam to Sienna, and a timeline of events that clearly showed her involvement in the conspiracy. As I presented each piece of evidence, I watched Sienna's composure crumble. She'd expected a simple hearing where she could play the victim and walk away with a restraining order that would protect her from scrutiny. Instead, she was watching her entire scheme unravel in open court. Ms. Walsh, I said finally, given this evidence, do you still maintain that you're the victim in this situation? She looked at her lawyer, who was frantically shuffling through papers and trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said weakly. What kind of misunderstanding? I may have misjudged the situation. Judge Hendricks had heard enough. Ms. Walsh, are you withdrawing your petition for a restraining order? Sienna looked around the courtroom like a trapped animal. Yes, Your Honor. I think I may have overreacted. Very well. The petition is dismissed. Judge Hendricks turned to me. Mr. Field, while I'm dismissing this petition, I want to be clear that if you do engage in any harassment or threatening behavior, Ms. Walsh or anyone else has every right to seek protection from this court. Understood, Your Honor, but I can assure you that won't be necessary. I have no interest in Ms. Walsh or her activities. As we left the courthouse, Sienna tried to approach me, but I walked past her without acknowledgement. She'd played her last card and lost. Whatever happened to her now was between her and the legal system. Richard was grinning as we reached the parking lot. That was masterful, Cameron. You completely destroyed her credibility. She destroyed her own credibility. I just helped her do it in public. What's next? I looked back at the courthouse, thinking about everything that had happened over the past few weeks. Next, I go back to my life. The real one, not the performance I've been putting on for the past 8 years. That evening, I received a call from Detective Sarah Morrison of the Boston Police Department. The DA's office had decided to investigate the conspiracy allegations against Sienna and Liam, and they wanted to interview me as a witness. We've been looking into Mr. Sutter's activities for several weeks now, Detective Morrison explained. Your case isn't the only one. We have at least 6 other women who've come forward with similar stories. What about Sienna Walsh? That's more complicated. She's clearly involved, but determining the extent of her criminal liability will take time. Her attempt to get a restraining order against you actually helped our case. It shows consciousness of guilt and an attempt to obstruct the investigation. What do you need from me? Just your cooperation. We may need you to testify if this goes to trial. Of course. After I hung up, I poured myself a drink and sat in my study, thinking about the journey that had brought me to this point. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a man desperate to save his marriage, willing to overlook almost anything to preserve the illusion of happiness. Now I was free, not just from Vanessa, but from the entire toxic web of relationships and obligations that had been slowly strangling me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Vanessa, still trying to reach me through new accounts and borrowed phones. Cameron, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I love you. I stared at the message for a long moment, thinking about the woman who had sent it. The woman who had looked at me with disgust in Dubai, who had planned to humiliate me as part of her exit strategy, who had been willing to participate in a conspiracy to defraud me. Did she love me? Maybe, in her own way, but her love was conditional, selfish, and ultimately worthless. I deleted the message without responding. The next morning brought news that Liam Sutter had been arrested at Logan Airport while trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. He was charged with multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and theft. Sienna had also been arrested, though she'd been released on bail pending trial. I felt no satisfaction at their arrests, no sense of victory or revenge. They were simply consequences, as natural and inevitable as gravity. Derek found me in my office later that morning, reading through sales reports and trying to get back to the business of running my company. So, it's really over? He asked. It's really over. How do you feel? I considered the question seriously. Lighter, I said finally. Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't even realize was there. Any regrets? About the marriage? No. About trusting the wrong people? Maybe. But even that taught me something valuable. What's that? That the most expensive lesson you can learn is the one that teaches you your own worth. Derek nodded, understanding. What about Vanessa? Think she learned anything? I looked out the window at the busy street, watching people go about their lives, each carrying their own burdens and dreams and secrets. I hope so, I said, but that's not my problem anymore. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went car shopping. Not for inventory for the dealership, but for myself. Something fun, impractical, and completely unnecessary. I ended up buying a 1969 Mustang Boss 429, a car I'd been admiring for years, but had never purchased because Vanessa thought it was too flashy and not appropriate for a man my age. As I drove it home, the engine rumbling like controlled thunder, I realized this was what freedom felt like. Not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of choice. The ability to make decisions based on what I wanted, not what someone else expected. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. The caller ID showed my lawyer's number. Richard, what's the news? The divorce is final. Vanessa signed the papers this morning. It's over, Cameron. I sat in my new car, engine ticking as it cooled, and felt the last chains of my old life fall away. Thank you, Richard, for everything. Thank you for letting me be part of it. This was the most interesting case I've handled in 20 years. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk, thinking about the future. Tomorrow, I would start building something new. Not just a life without Vanessa, but a life that was truly mine. The woman who had told me she'd rather sleep with a homeless man than with me was now homeless herself, staying with relatives and facing criminal charges. The man who had promised to help her find her authentic self was sitting in a jail cell. The friend who had betrayed her trust was facing her own legal troubles. I felt no joy in their downfall, but I felt no sorrow either. They had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. As for me, I was finally free to make my own choices. And the first choice I made was to never again let anyone make me feel like I was worth less than I knew myself to be. I got out of the car and walked toward my house, not ours, with a lighter step than I'd had in years. Behind me, the Mustang sat in the driveway like a promise of adventures to come.